Hi, it's Tiffany Lorraine, the Resilient Mother with the Resilient Mother podcast. This month, we're going to be talking about strength from within, resilient strength. And my guest for today is Coach Reed with FullSpartan.com, and he knows all about having strength.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and talk about resilient strength. My name is Coach Reed. I was a 30-year, still am coaching, but I coach coaches, but over 30 years veteran of coaching soccer, primarily youth sports. And now I've actually worked with organizations and coaches to help them craft better learning environments for their athletes. And the big area for me is I was a software guy. So I felt like there was always a big push and emphasis on the hardware of the game. So speed, skill, talent, all of that. And we were always worried about out results, but we never thought about how the software runs the hardware. So if our athletes aren't in the right mindsets, don't have resilience, don't have mental strength, and aren't being spoken to in the right languages, the right language, then they're not able to actually process and become better athletes because the software breaks down. So that was my focus. And my book is all about how we speak to ourselves and others.
If you had to define the word resilience, how would you define it?
It's funny because that's come up a lot lately. Mine is adaptation. It's not just bouncing back, but it's being able to adapt, because sometimes you don't actually bounce back. You adapt and overcome situations. And so for me, resilience is that ability to face an obstacle, face adversity, have a setback, but learn to either overcome it, adapt to it, or if you decide it's not a setback that you need to be challenged with, is to find a way around it, to solve it. So it's problem solving, it's adaptation, it's bouncing back for me.
Well, I love that definition of that. How would you add strength to that? Because that sounds like resilience that's been building, not just like one time you were resilient and you bounced back, you learned from it. And then the next time you got stronger and you dealt with the situation better.
Yes. And I was going to say that, but I'm glad you asked that question. For me, resilience is a muscle. It's just like any other muscle that we exercise. It's a mental model. It's a mental concept. And the brain is at its deepest core, we can train the brain and create strength within the brain, just like a muscle. So my thought is that resilient strength is the ability to apply it regularly, consistently, and to work on it. It's something you have to work at every day. You don't just suddenly wake up one day and you're resilient. Most people, like you said, it's developed over time. Consistency, discipline, focus, and having a little bit of a mental mindset of not being afraid to fail, not being afraid to face a challenge, and being able to get to the other side of that fear. What's on the other side of the fear for us that helps us grow? That's something I heard. Oh, I'm going to forget who said it, but I heard a famous actor, Jamie Foxx once said that it's all about getting to the other side of fear.
Absolutely. Because once you let fear go, then you're unstoppable. That really seems to be the thing. Fear of failure that holds a lot of people back. When failure is not fatal, failure is just part of the process. You're never going to be great at something the first time. It takes doing it over and over and over again to become a master of it. So to master your resilience, you're just going to have to adapt over and over and over again until you reach your goal that you're striving for. We're talking about strength from within. So how is building resilience kind of like building the foundation of a house or creating the baseline for a great life?
Well, if you start early on, especially as a parent working with your children, if you start early on teaching coping skills, adaptation skills, problem solving skills, creative thinking, stepping back from a situation and just choosing to respond versus react, you start to build that resilience foundation at a very young age. If at a young age, you're not afraid to take risks, and you understand that there might be consequences to those risks, but that you can always overcome those consequences. And if you're not afraid of failure, if you learn to face your fears and find creative or adaptive ways to get around those fears or through those fears, then you start to build that foundation for resilience. And then it just becomes, like I said, it's like a muscle. It just becomes something you use every day. I'll give you a strange example, but I had a bad back for many years, and it was muscular. And what was happening was I was using my back less and less. I was lifting things less. I was bending over less. I was trying to be prone more often. Well, what happens is those muscles atrophy. So I go in and see a specialist, and the specialist says, well, one of your problems is you've lost your core. You've got no core, none of the support muscles around your lower back, your hamstrings, your glutes aren't doing any work at all. He said, I can see that. So we need to get you back to building those muscles back up for a strong foundation to help secure your lower back. Well, it's the same thing with resilience. Resilience is a very strong foundation that if we use it every day, if we find ways to be more resilient and build up that resilient strength, even in our daily lives, just with the way we speak to each other or we speak to our children or the way we interact with our children, then we're building that foundation for success in the future.
So it's important to let our kids fail, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes, that and as a sport coach, that was always one of my big things for both the coaches and the parents on the other sidelines. They're both there at all times. They both care about the welfare of the athlete. They both want to see them doing their very best. But a lot of times we step in and fix things for them too quickly. And the best thing we can do for our kids is it's not just let them fail. It's to give them the confidence that they can do things on their own and they can solve things on their own. So it's less about the failure. It's more about teaching them that it's okay. We can solve it. So the big thing I used to always tell coaches was there's nothing more powerful than silence. When an athlete messes up, don't give them the solution. Give them silence and let them figure it out. They'll get a look. Kids have a look. When they really need your help, they'll look at you. And when they look at you, then you can step in. But again, I'm not going to give them the solution. I know the answer. I want them to learn the answer. The root word for education is educare, as Jane Nelson, my mentor, always says. And that means to draw forth. So I'm not supposed to be pouring answers into my kids. I'm supposed to be drawing them out. Same thing for parents. Your children are going to experience setbacks. They're going to experience difficult, in sports, for instance, I always told parents, they're going to experience difficult playing situations. They may not like their coach. They may not be getting the playing time they want. They may not be playing the position they want. This is an opportunity for them to learn resilience by interacting with them. Instead of bad mouthing the coach or stepping in and fixing it or yelling at them from the sidelines, ask them more questions and ask them, how would you solve it? How do you want to solve it? Challenge them to be the one that carries that meaningful conversation with their coach about why they would like more playing time or why they would like to play a different position, and help them formulate a very good argument. Even at the very young ages, when we take a step back when our kids make a mistake, sometimes we learn how magical it is to see a kid solve the puzzle. When we learn
the amount
to
of
walk,
confidence that they get from that moment, they realize they earned it and they did it on their own, is not something that you could replace by fixing it for them, because then they don't have that confidence, like you said, to know that they are capable on their own.
yes, and that's a piece of the puzzle. I mean, watch a baby learn to walk. Watch a toddler. They fall down, they get up, they fall down, they try again, They don't quit. There's no quit in them. They instinctually and naturally, whether it's humans, animals, whatever it is, they all instinctually, naturally learn how to walk or fly.
Yep.
But once they get to a certain age, we start stepping in and we take away that confidence, like you said. And there's nothing more powerful from a resilience perspective than somebody that's overcome something on their own. They've solved it. So the next problem that comes up, they don't look to anybody else. They don't look to the sidelines. They don't look to mom and dad. They don't look to coach. They look inward and say, how can I solve this? And one of the two best things you can do is when they fall down, give them a second. You can say, it's okay. Hey, you got this. You can get up. You got it. You're fine. You can give them encouragement, but don't pick them up. And two is to celebrate the win for them. Make sure they know how they solved it. We used to always tell our coaches on the fields, we want problem aware, solution focused athletes, not problem focused athletes.
I think the most powerful words can be try again. I'm very happy to say that's something that my 2.5-year-old says a lot, even to me. And it's really cute. He'll see me do something that didn't quite work and he'll say, try again. And I'm like, yes, I've instilled something good in this little person. Because I see him problem solving in his head and he doesn't get frustrated. He's just like, oh, okay, well, let's try this. And I hope that'll carry with him, because I know that'll really, really serve him. We want to not fail as parents. And I think we have to realize we're not going to be perfect parents. And we cannot save our children from all the pain of life. That is not really serving them. They have to know that there are going to be painful times in life that they're just going to be able to overcome. Maybe there's going to be a grieving process. Maybe there's going to be a time a muscle is sore because it's rebuilding, and it's painful to build muscle sometimes, not to the point of injury, but you don't build that muscle without giving it some pressure and tearing it and getting it to rebuild itself. And life's kind of like that. It's just the process of us growing. Those down moments help us appreciate the high moments, those moments we achieve something. The minute we know, oh, I did this, or today's a happy day, I'm going to relish in this moment and make it last. But without opposition, we wouldn't even know what to appreciate in our lives.
I totally agree. It's that push-pull of the world, right? It's I was watching a thing the other day by the Mulligan brothers, and they had been interviewing Shaolin monks and Tibetan monks. And one of the monks, no, I'm sorry. It was a guy from Ronin Tactics who said it. He said, how can you live the life? I'm going to mess it up, but he's basically saying, how can you live the life you want to live if you haven't experienced the life you don't want to live? In other words,
Yeah.
He was saying, how can you know what joy is unless you felt a little bit of sadness? How can you know what victory is unless you've tasted defeat? How can you know what confidence is unless you've had a little anxiety or fear?
Exactly, exactly. You can't know what you want out of life if you don't know what you don't want out of life. And it's important
Yes.
to be proactive and intentional in what you do. And I think resilience is part of that as well. You intentionally go build muscles, you go to the gym, you have a routine, you have a coach, you have practice, you have strategies, you have things in place. And you have to have those in order to achieve anything. You can't go about life just lollygagging and kind of letting other people decide for you and just going with outside validation. You have to have that inward strength to know where the boundaries are for what you want and where you're going in your life. And that takes some discipline.
It does. And one of the biggest roadblocks that we typically see, especially in athletes, is it's not the consistency of going to the gym. It's not the consistency of getting on the field, working on the skills, those types of things that end up being what trips them. It's, as they always say, the 4 inches between the head. It's the way they think about things, approach things, or it's how they speak to themselves. And that's where
Yeah.
that's where a lot of the setbacks occur with us as parents and coaches and leaders. Is sometimes our voice becomes their voice. So we say and do things that they pick up and they carry inwardly. So if a coach is always looking for mistakes and pointing out and criticizing a child's abilities, then that's the voice they start to carry. But if you've got a coach that's encouraging you, saying, it's okay, let's problem solve through this. You've got this. I believe in you. Or if they say, one of the chapters in my book is can't. If they're using the word can't, then you need to switch that word. It's the Carol Dweck yet. Can't yet. I'm right here with you. Or, in my house, we've had an acronym for years, the challenge that we use called, when somebody says can't, everybody in our house goes, challenge accepted, no take backs. And so you are now forced into that challenge by peer pressure to say, my kids used to always say, I don't want to learn to surf my back. And my kids are like, challenge accepted, no take backs, Dad. So, Dad's got to be a surfer dude,
That's awesome. What would you say is a defining moment of resilience and strength for you in your life?
Oh my goodness. When aren't they?
Ah,
I think as a parent, they were every day for my kids
right?
and for
Because they always
myself.
change. Like you think you have it figured out and then they change and they're all different. So it's like every day it's like, all right, wait, what do I got to adapt to today?
Yes. And the kids are so, we have 3 and they were all so very different in their approach to life and their self-talk and their, their external voice. And in most recent years, 2019, 2020 were very difficult years for everybody. For me in particular, my world collapsed for a few reasons. I was working in the sports realm. I was traveling and doing a lot of consulting and speaking engagements, and the bottom kind of fell out of that because I had a partner who didn't like to share I don't know, for whatever reason, but we didn't have the same values, and I didn't want to be a part of that. And I didn't want to change my values. And it had it was a Jerry Maguire situation where it had a tremendous effect on me and in my zeal to separate myself and create my own name and brand and stick to who I am. I found a lot of setbacks. I found myself sort of back on the outside, looking in and lost a lot of momentum. And then 2020 hit, and my 2 biggest clients obviously pulled back the reins. So here I am, no longer with the income stream, no longer with the relevance, no longer with doing what I love. And so I think it was less of, I don't have an audience or I don't have business. It was what I love was gone, and it was my fault. It was my choice, but it was gone. And on top of that, the other piece and the other reason why I pulled back, because I disappeared from online I was gone. People said, you ghosted. You were just totally gone. All of a sudden you're posting a couple times a day and you're doing talks everywhere. And then boom, nothing. The other reason was my daughter was going through some medical issues, and it was mysterious. We couldn't figure it out. And it was 1.5 years to almost 2 years of fainting spells and heart issues and injuries. And doctors are saying she's hysterical and doctors are saying it's made up. And we finally got a diagnosis in 2020, late 2021, that she has Ehlers-Danlos, and it sets in your 20s, which is when it set in for her. So she was perfectly healthy kid, no problems at all. And all of a sudden she's got the body of a 70-year-old. very elastic joints. They pop out of place very easily. She's got POTS. She's got endometriosis. These are all, comorbid factors of Ehlers-Danlos. And so to deal with losing what made me get up in the morning every morning and to face the fact that I wasn't bringing to the world my gift. And then also this mystery of my daughter was a very difficult time. And one of the things I think that one of the ways that my resilient strength became better was through my own kid. To watch her as a 20-something not have the life I had as a 20-year-old, not have that energy to get out of bed some days or to be able to do physical activities in most 20 years, not going out with her buddies to clubs or dinners or anything because she couldn't. To watch her every day approach it with a smile, to watch her even, myself, even at times I was like, being a psychology person, I was like, I think it's in her head. I think it's a psychological thing. I think she's got PTSD or something. We need to get that fixed. So I doubted her. And to watch her still love me, even though I doubted her, and to still show up every day with a smile and say, this is the life that I was given and this is the life I'm going to live. She showed a tremendous amount of resilience, and it gave me a lot of courage and hope. And,
Wow.
And obviously I'm in a very different place, and we're all in a very different place. And now that she's got a positive diagnosis, they're able to actually treat it in a way where she's starting to live a little bit more normal life. She's more like a 50-year-old in a 20-year-old's body. I can say that because I'm almost 50.
I think that's the beautiful gift of being a parent, is often our children teach us lessons we didn't know we needed to learn from them. We think it's going to be the other way around when often sometimes they're the miracle that steps into our life and creates the best change. And that's why I call all my kids my miracles. So I can relate to that in a lot of ways.
They are amazing. My one son, the other thing that happened was, so I still had back issues, but I was doing yoga with my wife and it was helping with mobility of joints and everything. And then I got a diagnosis that I had basically a bulging disc, spondylolisthesis or whatever in the lower spine, and arthritis in my hips. At 49 years old, I've got arthritis that my hips pop out and stuff. Like, are you kidding me? Ouch. So my son says, Dad, you used to lift weights. Get back in the gym with me. He's 17. He wants to be a bodybuilder, and he wants to be a fitness influencer, and he's going to go get his strength training degree, all that. And I said, okay. So this kid gets me back in the gym. So between my daughter, who just faces life, that the hand that she's dealt with, and my son, who's like, buddy, we're going to get back under the bar together. Like, you couldn't ask for better resilience. I've bounced back and I'm lifting heavier weights than I ever lifted. And I'm 49 years old. And I never lifted this level in my 20s. And it's because I got this 17-year-old who's just, every day he's reminded, you're the one that says can't isn't a word, Dad. You're the one that says, and you're the one that says never say don't. So, two really resilient kids. Our kids teach us so much about the world.
Yeah. Careful the seeds you plant there. They're going to come back and get you.
Yes. They're throwing everything I threw at them when they were 4, 5, and 6. They're tossing it back at me now that I'm,
Well, I think that's important to note as a parent, because you think sometimes it's going in one ear and out the other, especially I'm noticing it with a preteen. Like, I'm not sure if anything I'm saying is landing or even getting heard, especially if there's headphones on, and it's like, I'm just going to hope.
Yeah.
And then I'll be in a situation like you or something, and I'll be like, oh, they were listening. Okay. So words are powerful. I think that's a big part of resilience. You talked about this earlier, and I think it's an important thing is the stories we tell ourselves. Because your daughter could have told herself a completely different story. You could have told yourself a completely different story. I think resilient strength is recognizing when we're having thoughts that are not serving us and realizing we have the power to change those things. And to also accept that as a human being, that we have negative emotions, but they don't have to become us. We can recognize them, give them their place, and then we can change our thoughts. We can change our feelings about things by putting a different meaning on them. It's all a matter of that mindset piece. But I think people don't realize how much they are the authors of their story. And sometimes they just need to take back the pen and take back the ownership of being the author of their life. And I think that's really resilience too, is just being like, hey, wait a minute, erase, start over. That's not the chapter I wanted. I'm going for this. And then just owning it.
Definitely. And I did for most of 2019, I was letting somebody else author my story for me. And I was letting them rent space free in my head and blaming others and upset and angry and, this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden, you're right. It's like, I think it was Elie Wiesel or Viktor Frankl who said the freedom of choice is the most important freedom we have. And it's like one day And talking with my wife and my kids, it was like, wait a minute, I have a choice to not allow that to help me. I have a choice to say, hey, I was the one that chose to take the path I'm taking, and I should be happy I'm on that path and I'm not part of anybody else's path. And like you said, I'm gonna take the pen back and I'm gonna start. Well, my book's coming out for that reason. It's like, I wrote this book in 2017. I've got a story to tell, and I'm letting other people keep me from writing my story because I want to blame other people for the fact that the bottom fell out on me. Or did I choose a path of integrity, which is who I am? And so really, I was on the right path the whole time. It's just sometimes the path has beautiful views, and sometimes the path is through a little barren area before you get to the really good view.
And sometimes the path is in the fog and you can't see what's coming ahead of you, but you keep going.
Yes. Yes. You may step a little bit lightly, but yes, somewhere on the other side of that fog, hopefully, is a really cool view.
Or sometimes you're in the dark and all you see is a light in the distance. Go towards the light. Just go towards the light. No, you'll get there. Now, I'm not saying go to the clouds in heaven. That's not what I was referring to. So just to clarify that. But if you could give this generation that's coming up any advice when it comes to resilience, what would you give it to them? Because there are some that are very defeated because they don't see the opportunities and the changes that are coming. They don't understand their resilience as youth, that they have their full energy, their full capacity. They have the ability to adapt and create new things with the way the world is changing. There are some that absolutely do, and they're knocking it out of the park, but there are some that just feel lost. They can't follow the same path of their parents. Some degrees don't mean as much as they used to anymore. We have things like AI coming in and taking over some jobs altogether. So some people just are open to, I think, a little bit of overwhelm with what happens next.
Yeah. So there's a couple word flips that I think are relevant. One is get to versus have to. A lot of people say, I have to do this. No, you get to choose to do the things you do. And then the other one is, I just totally blanked on the other one. It'll come back to me. But the whole idea that we're dealt a bad, it's dealing with being dealt a bad hand versus having the opportunity to find new paths. And I actually tell my kids, my 19-year-old, my middle child, graduated in the midst of the pandemic and didn't have really a junior, senior year, didn't enjoy the things that we enjoyed, didn't get to do the things that I remember were so cool about high school. And then chose to not go to college. He says, what I want to do is I want to go into the workforce. And we have a deal with our kids that they can either go to school, no matter what they do, we're going to buy them a certification or some kind of type of skill set that nobody can take away. So real estate, insurance, CSCS. My son wants to be a certified strength and conditioning coach, so that we'll help pay for that and help them study for something like that. So they have a skill they can transfer. Well, our daughter's in insurance and is doing phenomenal, and she's in health insurance. My other son went into property and casualty insurance instead of going to school. He says, I want to do that. I want a full-time job. I want to be working, and I want to figure out what it is I want to do with my life through the work. And then I will go back and get a degree that matches up, which I thought, wow, and I was talking to him and I said, you're lucky you grew up when you grew up. Everybody wants to say, oh, this poor generation that dealt with the pandemic, you're lucky. And he says, how do you think that's lucky, Dad? And I said, because we were given a script. Because when I was your age, I was given a script. You must go to school. You must get a 4-year degree. Then you go right into the workforce. And then you do this. And then you get a family. And then you buy a house. And then you do this. And I said, and that's great because I always felt safe. But I can't count the number of times that I just saw a thing about the CEO of I can't remember if it was monetization at Twitter or whatever, who was sleeping in her office to get jobs done. And then one day walks in and she's fired. Like, it doesn't matter how important and how vital and how valuable you are expendable in certain situations. So, and I'm not knocking corporate America, but I'm saying you have to take your path and know that. And what I was saying to my son was, you get to choose. Do you want to work from home? You can work from home. Do you want to choose not to go to college? Well, the degree, I have 2 master's degrees. And you know what? My daughter's now making almost as much as me. And she's 23 years old with no degrees, but she's got that insurance license and that skill set. And so now the degree means even less. And they don't have the debt I had,
Right.
And so I said, you're so lucky because you have this freedom in a world. And yes, AI exists, but you can either say, I have to deal with AI, or I get to another opportunity to use a new tool that didn't exist 50 years ago to help me live a better life. And
Yeah.
so that's how he's looking at it, is these things that we see that, oh, it's changed the world dramatically. I feel like it's given them the chance to put their foot down and say, I mean, imagine, especially for like my daughter, imagine a world where you actually have more of a say. You can get a seat at the table and actually have a say. Because when I was a kid, women entrepreneurs and women in business, they were not treated as the first class citizens in the business world. And it was very
Right.
frustrated to my wife and my daughter. We talk about it all the time. Like, guys like me, I'm applauded when I'm outgoing and boisterous and I share my story and I stand up for myself. My wife says when I do it, I'm a BIT, like she's like, they
Right.
don't say at a boy or at a girl. They're like, look at that Karen, like my wife's like, I'm sick of being called that. She goes, I'm just standing up for myself. And so I
Yeah.
feel like everything that happened that was so awful created a dialogue and created a narrative where people can actually say, they now can stand up and say, this isn't right, the way you're treating this person or these people or me. And they can say, I don't want to work in the office. I'd like to work remote. And you know what? If there's no organizations out there that want to hire you to work remote, you can create a set of skills for yourself that you don't even need to work for somebody else. You can work for yourself. We're in a creator economy. I mean,
Yeah.
we have studios in our pockets. I would have loved when I was in my 20s to have a video and audio studio in my pocket. I had so many cool ideas, and
Yeah.
now I'm just old and out of touch.
I
So
haven't finished my degree, and here I am making a podcast with you. So
yes, like we joke all the time. It's like, my kids are going to be far more successful than I could ever dream of being, and they're not going to have the degrees because I spent too much time in the classroom
yeah.
and not enough time crafting these skills that actually allowed me to survive in life. So that's what I say to that generation is you get the opportunity to create the path and the narrative and the life you want. And a lot of us in the older generations are a little bit jealous because we were kind of handed a script and said, this is the way you're supposed to live your
Yeah.
life.
Exactly. Exactly. There's just a world of opportunity. And I really appreciate how now people want their whole lifestyle to fill them up. They don't want to be just trading time for money or being at a job, counting on it working for them. You have to add value to yourself now, but the value you get to add to yourself is on your terms. It's
Yeah.
no longer on someone else's terms. And I think that's better for families and individuals. And it's also going to create kind of this renaissance of people who really embrace it and figure out how they're going to have their voice and their impact on the world. Because my belief is you are the only person like you in the universe. And
Yes.
there's no one who can replace you or the impact you're going to make. There are people that are meant to hear your voice and your message, and they're meant to be served by you. And no one else is going to take that place. And so for those struggling, it's just a matter of realize who you are and that you have great potential and there's someone waiting for you to step into it.
Yes. And the world has become, it's no longer the word tolerance. It's accepting, it's understanding, it's wanting to see that breadth and width of depth and width and breadth of life. So for instance, as I tell my kids, you can be as weird as you want. When I was a kid, if I was weird, I was a weirdo. I was an outcast. And now we're seeing a world where it's like, they want people to be themselves. And when you are as like my son says, when I get to be as weird as I want, the world actually embraces me for being weird. I'm like, yeah, so be your authentic self. Don't
Yeah.
fit in a box anymore. And I love it, and
I'm
there's
just
just so
laughing
much
because
opportunity.
I went to the gym today wearing a Yoda hat to match my son going to the gym. And I knew I stuck out like a sore thumb, but I wanted to match my son today and we were cute. So like, I'm just being me.
20 years ago, people would have been like, check out that. Like today, they're like, that's freaking cool. I mean, that's what I love about this. The other thing I really love about the younger generations is they're cause oriented. They buy for causes. Like I'll go and purchase whatever and I'll find the best price. But my kids will look for the most impact. They buy things that have an impact. And so I love that about that younger generation is I tell my kids, it's too late. I'm 49 years old. My generation blew it. We had a chance to change the world. We were considered the generation that would change the world. We've done a heck of a lot. I mean, Gen Xers, I'm a Gen Xer. Man, we were prepared for the pandemic. I mean,
Yeah.
don't talk to anybody, fix your own meals, stay at home alone.
Yeah.
I was doing that when I was 12 years old. I'm
Right.
ready to roll. This is great. And there's a lot that came out of our generation. I was joking with my kids. They were talking about old Gen Xers. And I was like, the phone you're holding in your hand came from the Gen Xers. Like a lot of the technology, the bust happened according to Moore's law in our generation. It was, 300 years of product and technology innovation in a 50-year time frame. But we weren't cause oriented. We didn't speak out. We weren't, my one friend says snowflakes, and I listen to my kids all talk. It's not they're being snowflakes. They're just, they're brave enough to say, hey, what you just said, I don't want to be called that, or that hurts my feelings, or that's not fair.
I don't agree with that, or
I don't agree with
my values. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're conscious of where their money is going. Does the money go that I'm spending? Is it going towards something that I value? Is it going to create impact in something I value? Not just, like you said, am I getting the best price? I do remember a lot of that growing up. How do I get the best bargain? How do I get the best price? How do I and now it's more about people. That's what I absolutely love about it. I was just in another Zoom meeting where we had a gentleman talking from corporate America and talking about what's being valued now are people who put people first, who see our humanity. It's not just results and goal oriented anymore. It's about the journey, and it's about creating the best impact in the end. And I think that's real resilience, because that's going to create more lasting change that's positive.
Yes. Yeah, as I say to my kids, my generation blew it. We had a chance to change the world, and they thought we were, but now your generation can, because you have a different angle. You care so deeply about people, and you just said it. Resilient strength builds empathy and courage and grace and compassion. When you've been through things and you've solved problems and you've overcome things and you've adapted to things in your life, like the pandemic, when you've had to spend your junior and senior year wiping things down and wearing masks and keeping 6 feet from people, and you're like, what is this? You come out of it on the other side as a more compassionate, empathy-driven, loving human being. And then you start giving your money and your time to causes that change the world. And that's what I envy of that generation. The younger kids actually will make a change to the world. I know it. It has to happen.
Drop mic. That was great. That we can just end right there. You have a book coming out. We mentioned it briefly, but could you give a little more detail about that and where people can find you for it? And
yes,
and then we'll wrap this up.
Happy to. It's called, let's see if I can get it in frame. It's called The Spartan Mindset, and it's mastering the language of excellence is the byline. And the whole idea is that I realized about midway through my career that, like I said, it was the software that mattered most, and how I delivered things and how the people I was teaching learned those things had a huge impact on their performance. And then how I spoke to them during their performances could really change it. So the book is based on that. I believe that I came up with the idea that there are power words and peril words and transformative words in high stress, high performance situations. And it doesn't matter if it's on the soccer field, on the stage, in the classroom, in the lab, in the workplace. When you are in situations that are high performance, high stress, airline cockpits, emergency rooms, you name it. And again, it could just be, it doesn't have to be, the stakes don't have to be high. For you, it's high pressure, high stress. The words we use really have an impact. There are words that are power words that actually help get us to peak performance. They inhibit peak performance. There are words that peril words, like can't, that actually can limit peak performance. Use the word can't, you're done for. You actually used the word earlier, and I love the use of it. Try. I was challenged. The book comes out on April 18th, but there are advanced copies out there. And a coach friend of mine said, "Well, I use try, and you say it's bad." And I explained, well, in a performance situation, when I say, "Oh, I'll try," then I'm giving myself an excuse not to actually complete the task. And he says, I use it in this way. Let's try another tack. This isn't working. Let's try. And I was like, that's a great use of the word try. And yours is too. Try again. Like, it's okay. I made a mistake. Try again. Go again. Do it again. But anyway, there are power words, and then there are these words that are just transformative. Using that word in the right situation at the right time with the right person can transform the moment, the person, you, everything. And those are words like love. And I tell a story about how the word love transformed an athletic performance in a moment, and my opinion of a sports coach. And like, I don't care what the coach did before or after that moment, that moment was transformative. And so that's the book's based on those. And Each chapter is a word. Each chapter opens with a story where the word was used, or a situation where that word or phrase might have had an impact. And then I talk about the brain processes, what's happening in the brain, what's some of the psychology behind that use of that word, what's the connection between the brain and the body, and how is it either enhanced or broken based on the use of that word. And then that chapters ends with tips and tricks and hints for either eliminating the word or replacing it, or enhancing the use of the word moving forward, better ways, more effective ways to use that word.
That sounds like your book would be a powerful way to develop resilient strength, especially from the inside, as we were talking about, by the story you're telling yourself, by paying attention to what words do and the psychology behind it. I think anyone listening to this sounds like a book that you need to do exactly what we're talking about today.
Yes. And just to warn people, it's called the Spartan Mindset, but it's less about the Spartan mindset. Like you said, it's more about the language we use and the mindset we develop. The reason it's called the Spartan Mindset is because it opens and closes with two stories about the Spartans, because there's an example. They used one word in both situations, and that one word stopped an entire war. It kept a nation from being put upon. And that's pretty powerful when a word can stop a war. And so I use those as the examples.
Well, if you've learned anything today, you need to watch the words and the thoughts that you have and make sure they're resilient and they keep you strong and that they serve you. Well, thank you so much for coming and being a part of the podcast today. Please go check out his book. Reach out to him at fullspartan.com. Coach Reed, this has been wonderful and so gracious to give me so much of your time today. And if you'd like to reach out to me, I also do some resilience coaching. I have a 5-step mindset program as well. I'm developing a 12-step program called Resilient You that has some similar principles, but also some different ones as well. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.